Good morning, everyone. It's been 2.5 years since I've been in this building, and I'm really delighted to be here. I'm going to preface this with the fact that last weekend when my daughter got married, while we were getting makeup on and hair done, I kept crying. And so the bridesmaids and the bride thought, okay, every time Mom cries, let's take a shot of tequila. So if I cry, I'm sorry, I did not bring any tequila. I always knew that I wanted to be a mother someday, much like most little girls of my generation. There were 5 kids in my family, and for some reason, I only ever wanted to have 4 children, 2 biologically procured and 2 adopted. As it turns out, I had 1 of each. Pregnancy and motherhood, both unplanned, became the main focus of my first year of marriage. My father had urged me to wait 2 years before conceiving, and my godmother, upon learning of my condition, encouraged me to abort. Ignoring her advice, I went on to deliver a healthy baby boy before my first anniversary, all during my 29th year. When our son was 2, my husband and I began trying for a second child. No shots yet. Okay. During what remained of his life, my husband's, we suffered 5 miscarriages and the loss of 2 children during the adoption process. One when her 17-year-old mother did not show up to sign the final release of custody paperwork. After a second marriage and another miscarriage, my husband and I successfully adopted a daughter, thus completing our family. She was married last weekend by my son's wife, another daughter. Sorry, it was so happy in front of close family and friends. Motherhood for me was just something that I had always taken for granted. And if the first pregnancy was any indication of reproductive success, more children would easily follow. I cheerfully assumed that my husband and I would raise our kids together and all would be well. At 36, I became a single parent to a first grader and was terrified. I felt an overwhelming responsibility to stay alive. At 37, I remarried. Bob adopted Fletcher, and we were somehow back on track as a family. After another miscarriage, we were finally able to see an adoption through to completion, and our family was whole. 2 parents, 2 kids, 2 dogs, and 2 cats, plus a barn full of various farm animals. Time passed, kids grew, and we were about to embark on a new chapter of life. Our son was about to move to New York for his wife's education, and our almost 16-year-old was about to ship off for boarding school. Our lives turned upside down the day after Bob's 60th birthday, and a few days before heading to Colorado and boarding school. 3 weeks to the day after my daughter's 16-year-old boyfriend died in a freak accident in Pine Creek, Bob suffered a fatal heart attack. Suddenly, no shots. I was alone with 3 grieving kids, one of whom was already steeped in grief over the loss of her boyfriend. Trying to parent while dealing with my own grief, caring for the animals, figuring out finances, Bob's psychotherapy practice and rentals, tremendous debt, realizing we would have to move, felt monumental and impossible. Stressful fall turned into lonely winter when Fletcher and Kara moved to New York and Libby flew alone to boarding school in the space of a week. It, for me, was the ultimate empty nest. While my nest was empty, my mother fell ill, necessitating that I go help both parents, both elderly. It was when I first felt the child becoming the parent. I ended up going to their home in San Diego every 2 to 3 weeks for 7 months, usually for 3 to 4 days at a time, but sometimes for as long as 3 weeks. Child as parent. That was all a decade ago. Life has calmed down and both kids have returned to Bozeman. While I occasionally receive a request to parent or impart any pearls of wisdom I may possess, more frequently than not, those parts of who I am are in a state of repose. I see my grandchildren daily, but am keenly aware that I am not their mother. I'm finding that now as I age and as my body begins to decay and my mind to atrophy, the parent is slowly transitioning to the child. There was a tremendous release of pressure and obligation when my daughter married last week. The fear of abandoning her, of leaving her an orphan before she fully came into her womanhood with a partner by her side, her greatest desire, was unconsciously wreaking havoc on my soul and heart. As I look back on my journey as a mother, there are a few things that stand out for me and that I'm proud of. While I have made many mistakes, and there are many instances that I regret, I can honestly say I've done my best. I have loved my children, I'm sure they would say imperfectly, and I have tried to put their needs before mine, even in the midst of loss and my overwhelming sadness. I've tried to raise them without poisoning them with my fears and my sense of impermanence. I've tried to let them live their lives and make their own mistakes, which many times went against every fiber of my being. While motherhood was something I always aspired to and always accepted as fact that I would attain, I didn't realize all of the challenges it would present to me, at least not in the ways they came. I am grateful that I made it to the other side and can now just enjoy watching my children with a bit of space. I feel blessed, if that is a thing. I now find myself in the joyful role of grandmother, or Cece as I'm known to my familiars. It's the perfect place to be.
That's a hard act to follow. Well, good morning and happy Mother's Day. When Jan Young first asked me if I would be interested in talking about motherhood and what it means to me, I thought, oh, I've got this. This is easy. I came up with all kinds of ideas and feelings, and I said, no, I need to, I need to channel this and go forth. So I approached it from what my mother meant to me and how she guided me into becoming a mother. She was a great friend, a great traveler, and an even better listener. And she was a remarkable woman in many ways, very self-educated. But there were 3 things that stood out the most about her to me, and that was her strong commitment to education, her passionate advocacy for social justice, and her deep love and support of her children. How did these traits influence me as a mother? She was an only child of older parents. She grew up in a very small, conservative New Jersey town. After graduating from high school, she wanted to go on to college, but her father would not support a girl going to college. She thought, I'm not giving up here, and she went to work at the Campbell Soup Factory in Trenton, New Jersey, to pay herself to go through college. Shortly after attending college, she met my father. They soon married. They had 3 children. And again, her education was put on hold. After my parents divorced, my mom still felt that pull to get educated, and so she went to work at a university where she was raising 3 kids alone, going to school at night, and working. And to this day, my brother and I laugh when he told her he wasn't going to finish college, and she said, "That's not an option." He jokingly says that he has not stopped taking one class or another ever since. Thank you, Mom, for showing me the value of a good education. Another strong thing I think about my mother is her social justice and particularly women's rights. I think she would be cringing right now if she saw the attack that's going on with Roe versus Wade right now. It was her generation that fought for that. I'm sorry, Mom. She was also a very strong political, very involved politically. And I think, again, I'm sorry she wasn't here for Hillary Clinton's election because she would have been front row and center. She wanted a woman president no matter what. It was that social advocacy that she strongly passed on to me and the rest of the family. It wasn't uncommon growing up in DC in the 60s to come home and find people you didn't know in your living room there for one sort of protest or another. She was, and it was that same social activism that brought her to Unitarian Universalism, first in the DC area and then in Santa Barbara. And in fact, it was my mother that first told me about the UU church here in Bozeman. She was an only child, but because of that, I think she had a hard time dealing with sibling rivalry. She was always trying to separate us. She didn't think we were supposed to fight or punch each other. And I think to this day, she's probably still wondering, are we being nice to each other? She felt she had to break us apart to settle the peace. And in that way, she passed that on to me. Being the youngest child, I was always the peacemaker. But I never doubted her love, her security, or her support. She was a fierce defender of her children, to the point that during the 60s, we had a U.S. senator living down the street, and he literally physically attacked my brother and called him a long hair. And my mother knocked on his door, called him out, and told him he had to apologize to her son right there. That's the kind of fierce woman she was, kind of like a mother bear cub. She never dissuaded us from our dreams, whether it was a nuclear physicist, an artist, or a biologist. She was always there, cheering us on. Thank you, Mom, for the encouragement and support. I think Maya Angelou says it best in her poem, Mother, a Cradle to Hold Me. It is true I was created in you. It is also true that you created for me. I owned your voice. It was shaped and tuned to soothe me. Your arms were molded in a cradle to hold me, to rock me. The scent of your body was the air perfumed for me to breathe. Mother, during those earliest days, I did not dream that you had a large life which included me, for I had a life which was only you. Time passed steadily and drew us apart. I was unwilling. I feared if I let you go, you would leave me eternally. You smiled at my fears, saying I would not stay in your lap forever. That one day you would have to stand, and where would I be? You smiled again. I did not. Without warning, you left me, but you returned immediately. You left again and returned. I admit quickly, but relief did not rest with me easily. You left again, but again returned. Each time you re-entered my world, you brought assurance. Slowly I gained confidence. You thought you knew me, but I did know you. You thought you were watching me, but I did hold you securely in my sight, recording every moment, memorizing your smiles, tracing your frowns. In your absence, I rehearsed you. The way you had of singing on a breeze while a sob lay at the root of your song. The way you posed your head so that the light would caress your face. When you put your fingers on my hand and your hand on my arm, I was blessed with a sense of health. of strength and very good fortune. You were always the heart of happiness to me, bringing nuggets of glee, sweets of open laughter. I loved you even during the years when you knew nothing and I knew everything. I loved you still, condescendingly, of course, from my high perch of teenage wisdom. I spoke sharply of you often because you were slow to understand. I grew older and was stunned to find how much knowledge you had gleaned, and so quickly. Mother, I have learned even now to know I have learned nearly nothing. On this day when mothers are being honored, let me thank you that my selfishness, ignorance, and mockery did not bring you to discard me like a broken doll, which had lost its favor. I thank you, you will still find something in me, to cherish me, to admire me, and to love. I thank you, Mother. I love you. When I became a mother, I was at a loss. While my mother was very loving and supportive, she was not the type to discuss breastfeeding, stretch marks, or any of those other things that came as a new mother. In fact, her way of dealing with puberty was to give me a copy of Our Bodies, Ourselves. I guess she could have done worse. There is a certain irony that here is a woman who burned her bra but couldn't discuss the more intimate details of motherhood. Thank goodness my husband had more experience at changing diapers, feeding, than I did. There is no doubt that the moment my daughter was placed on my chest, there was an immediate bond, only a bond a mother and child can form. Through the eyes of a child, I relearned the wonders of nature, of color, and beauty. Through the terrible teens, I saw her become her own. I remember once a friend saying, we raise our children to have a mind of their own, to stand up for themselves, and to stand up for others. Never have I been more proud of Katie than when she stood up for the underdog, even when she had to spend time in the hallway because she was a little too loud about her passion. It is that passion for the underdog that is her grandmother's legacy. Thank you, Katie, for making our world a little better. Now she's a grown woman with a family of her own. I'm so proud of the person she has become. I say that not just because she's my daughter. She's making her mark in this community. As a small business owner, I'm so impressed with her compassion for her employees, the business, the clients, and most importantly, the dogs. Wherever she goes from here, she will make a difference. What more could a mother, a parent, ask for? Yes, motherhood is one of the most challenging jobs we are given, but it's also one of the most rewarding. And with these words from Mother Teresa, I close. You will teach them to fly, but they will never fly your flight. Whoops. You will teach them to dream, but they will never dream your dream. You will teach them to live, but they will never live your life. Nevertheless, in every flight, in every life, in every dream, the print of the way you taught them will remain.